Evening, everybody. There are those of us here by choice, you know, that we chose the West and we came from points east, south, north to come in the West. And then there are some people here who were born here and made the good decision to stay. And so I'm one of the transplants, and our speaker tonight was born along the Mormon Trail and has a long family history here in the West. But is there anybody in this room a Yellowstone fan? Anybody? How about 1883? Yeah. Well, you know, when I was looking through Glen's work this afternoon, I thought that many of his paintings actually look like scenes from 1883.
They stole them.
They stole them from you, yeah. Scenes of Conestoga wagons and families in the daylight and at night, living the life, moving along the trail. So we're very lucky to have him tonight, and he is here with a number of members of his family who come to support him tonight. Can we ask them to stand, the Hopkinsons here?
Yeah. My daughter Heather and Ryan, and then my son Todd and his wife Sheila, and of course Pam. And Todd's gonna run the projector.
Okay, very special welcome to you all. So our speaker tonight has painted some images of the West, which we all know and love, and it has been my pleasure to have been with him tonight and learning about his very different kind of life. So let's all welcome Glen Hopkinson.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. It's an honor and pleasure to be here with you tonight. I was born in Laramie, Wyoming. My wife was born in Lovell, Wyoming, and that's where we grew up. When I was 5 years old, my dad went to Byron as a superintendent and a teacher, and it's a little town not far from Cody, and so that's where we grew up. And a good share of that growing up, well, it's a small town, so anywhere you grow up is almost across the street. But we literally, in our early teenage years, lived across the street from each other. And so after some college and coming back home from a stint overseas, I actually was a Mormon missionary in Korea for about 2.5 years. So I went over there and learned that language and came home and married my sweetheart. And so we have 5 children, and they're all grown with spouses, and we have 16 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren, and more great-grandchildren to come, I'm hoping. But in May, in June, we're 53 years together. So that's kind of cool. The funny thing is I posted something on Facebook the other day, and I think it was a little controversial to somebody, and so some writer said, well, tell that old man to get a job or something like that. Old man, who is he talking to? You know, who's he talking about? Because when they talk about an old man, I'm thinking of somebody else. But so I've had a long career, and I was very fortunate. And my father was Harold Hopkinson, and he was a very good artist. When we moved to Byron, he was beginning to be an artist. He was a fairly young man when I was 5, but I remember that over the years he worked hard and built himself an art career while he was being a superintendent and then a teacher and an art teacher. And so I had a good education from him. He assisted me in getting art education from other artists, as well as attending college. And I would try to pick good professors. So we had our first child, and your first name? Chuck. Chuck asked me, were you an illustrator? I said, I was. I was an illustrator for one company for 3 or 4 months. It was an advertising agency, and I was the last one hired at $3.50 an hour back in 1971, and they lost an accountant, and so about 3 months later they came and said, well, you're gone because last one hired, first one fired. So I went to another company, and after 6 months they went out of business, and so I had a pretty good record of being an employee. It just so happened that somebody called me up and gave me a commission, and that took us back to Cody, Wyoming. And so we moved back to Cody with our boy, and that very same summer we had our girl, and so it was touch and go. You know, we had an $80 house payment every month, and so when that came about, I had to get out and hustle. I'd paint these little paintings and find people who might want to buy them for $40 or $50, and so we did that. And I always said, well, my dad, who had created his career, had a bank account about the time he retired, and was painting full time, and I was painting full time. So he was a rich artist, and I was a starving artist. And so it was, you know, but we hung in there. I especially give a lot of credit to my wife, Pam. I had some friends who were pretty good artists as well, and I realized, watching them, that it took a great deal of courage for Pam to hang in there and be able to just stay home and take care of the kids while I went out and tried to hustle paintings. But I remember when we first had a show where I made a few dollars for like it lasted me about a month. I called her up on the phone about 500 miles away. I said, Pam, I know what we're going to do now, because we were wondering, you know. She said, well, I said, I'm going to paint. I'm going to paint till the money runs out. And her parents were there in the house with her, and I could almost hear thump, thump. So anyway, that's what we did. And anyway, so I'm going to tell you why I paint, and a little bit how I do what I do, and why I think what I do is important. First of all, it's important to me and my family, because that got us at least to this point. Well, my kids, of course, they took off on their own, and they've all been very successful in themselves. And I'm asked, are they artists? I think they are. They haven't tried to make a living at it, but it's a tough business, and so I'm fine with what they've made a living at. But we're having actually this Thursday and Friday, we're having a workshop. And some of them are going to be involved in that. The workshop is at Atwater Farms.
End of Speedway, like the guest right?
End of Speedway, yeah, and it's a beautiful location. There's a lake and there's lots of trees, and it's going to be Thursday and Friday. So you're welcome to come by and join into that if you want to pay the big bucks. But you can talk to her if you're interested in that. But we're going to have fun learning how to paint. Now, can you go back to the start, Todd? And we'll talk a little bit about, that's my dad's, one of my dad's pieces, but this is one of mine. We'll go ahead and go down to Dad's. And like I say, he was a great artist and a really fine teacher. And in our little town of, at the time, 350 people, and a high school of less than 100 kids, high school and junior high together, I think there were about 8 or 9, and that's a big number, maybe 10 people who had somewhat of a career in art from his teaching. And of course he taught outside of school too. Go ahead and go to the next one, Todd, and you can let it kind of go. And now in this one, stop it there. I had my children posed, and the boy in the hat in the front is Todd. And now Heather didn't make it in this cut. But the next one is my daughter Summer, who isn't here, and she's in that hat. I don't know who the boy is. Somebody I found in that book. And the last one is my youngest daughter Holly, and she's not with us. She lives up in Wyoming. And she got 3 young children, couldn't make it. Go ahead. And one of the things I like to do, I started painting Indians a lot. In the first 20 years, I painted a lot of them. And we live near the Crow Indian Reservation by Custer Battlefield, and then to the south of us are the Shoshone and Arapaho reservations, and so we're really surrounded by folks. I made some good acquaintances with the Crow Indians, and this painting was derived from being at the Custer Battlefield, and people ask me, do you paint from people, from life? I do it all. I paint from, and I'll tell you a little bit more about painting on location. I paint from models, people models, and I paint animals. Now, when I'm painting animals in action, yes, I do resort to photographs because they're moving. But it's good to paint them while they're, I found out that about 11 o'clock in the morning, horses will have eaten and they're resting. That's a good time to get out and paint because they don't move so much. Go ahead. As I began painting, and I did a lot of the Indian paintings and learned a lot about their lifestyle, I started becoming more and more interested in our family history. And we had people that immigrated from England, and my great-grandfather Hopkinson was a sailor. They shipwrecked. This is tall ships, you know. They shipwrecked over in Japan, and then he went back to England and married a girl and was a coal miner for a while, and then they moved out west to near it was Superior, Wyoming, which is near Rock Springs, and they weren't of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They and never were except one, and that was my grandfather. He married a little Mormon girl there in Fort Bridger, Wyoming, and that's what got our side of the family. Now Pam's family, on the other hand, they came out in the early days, and her grandfather and great-grandfather were pioneers up to Byron, Wyoming in 1900, where they built canals and stuff. And so about this painting, I was being a Wyoming person and an Arizona person, because we lived in Mesa or Tucson about 5 years. We lived in Mesa for about 18. There's a corridor from northern Wyoming on down through Utah on down to Arizona, and so I paint all of that stuff. Coming down through Beaver, Utah, 19 miles to the west is where some of my great-grandparents are buried, and so I drove over to Minersville to see those places, and saw this rock and stopped and painted on location. Go ahead, Todd.
Beautiful.
This is one of the early crossing scenes I did. One of the things I realized as I studied more and more about the early pioneers, the people that came west, is you didn't come to a bridge and just whip across it at 60 miles an hour. You had to cross the river. And it would, with a big pioneer company, it would take a few days before they all got across. And so I did that and followed it up with quite a few crossing scenes later on, because I just loved the look. Go ahead. This is one of my favorite mountains and it's a small mountain. It's called Red Mountain. It's in Mesa, Arizona, and right near where we live. And every time I see it, I think, oh, I got to paint that again. I painted it several times. Go ahead. Now this is Push Ridge, you know, the west end of the Catalinas, and this painting here is the one I did on location, and this is a photograph of the bigger painting I did from that. But I went and took this big old canvas out there, and you know, I go to a place where I know the light is going to change to this. It starts out one way, I get to drawing in, or you know, in masses, and then when the light hits, I've got the right color, and I just splash it on, and oftentimes I'll get to a point and then sometimes finish it in my studio. The Grand Canyon, I love painting it. Yeah, those, I love painting the Indians. And we have snow up in Wyoming. Did you know that? Now this painting, when I got this painting finished, I really liked the composition. I liked the light flashing back, you know, the reflected light on the horses and everything. So I thought, well, I'm gonna do another similar composition and put mountain men on it. So that was what came there. that was fun doing those.
Glenn?
Yeah.
Did you ever show your pictures of Indians to Indians? Did you ever
Yeah,
see their reaction?
yeah, I did. And there's one coming up I want to talk about for just a second.
Okay.
And families have been important to me in representing the paintings that I do, and it included the Indian lifestyle and the travois. And a man, a horse, and his hog? No, dog. I was up in Logan, Utah, on one of my pass-throughs, and I stopped at this little lake, and there was a bridge, and some of these little boys were swimming in that pool, so I painted a picture. Now this, farewell, my son. This, our oldest son Travis was a soldier, and that's why I have white hair, by the way. Because he went over Iraq 3 different times and didn't die, and I'm glad of that. But the first one was Desert Storm Trap,
Yep.
and that was a short war, but it was the scariest probably for Mom and Dad. We watched the news we could hardly sleep. This painting that I had painted years before, called Farewell, My Son, was kind of over the TV that we watched, and it reminded us. Okay, poke that and let it go. This is how fast I really paint. But go back to that, Todd. Just leave it there for a second. Hold it up. Painting your subject live, plein air painting, field painting, painting on location, painting from live models. I do that all. But a funny thing happened. Not too long after this, I was at another place. I set up my phone on a tripod and for the camera to do such a thing as this, and I poked the button and I went and painted the picture. And naturally, when I set my phone by my little iPad, it transfers. So it was on my iPad. I was looking the other day. I came across that and added it to this presentation. I came across another, and they're usually 19, 20 seconds. You know, that's good. And I came across this one, 15 minutes. What? And so I poked the button, and there I am. It was in slow motion. So if you want to watch a slow motion painting, that would be something. I can't even watch it. Go ahead. I painted the landscape there by our house in Byron, and then put the Indians in later. This is up near the same way it happened there, and this too. These are all plein air paintings that are added. The characters are added later in the studio. Young patriots on parade. Now here's where my grandchildren come in. Go back to the first little girl is my granddaughter Chloe, and then some little boy we found, and then the little girl with the tin pot on her head is my granddaughter Lily, and then another boy that I found to model, and then the little one here is my granddaughter Lavender. They're all 3 sisters. Their 4th sister, Zinnia, wasn't born yet, so she didn't get to be in the picture. But anyway, a lot of fun. Now they're all grown and married, and the 2 older girls have two little children each, and it's wonderful to have them in the family.
Your great grandchildren.
I took an 18 by 24 canvas and drove up Catalina Highway, and a couple of switchbacks up, I came across this scene. So I pulled off, very narrow, and I'm hoping I'm not going to die. But I put my paints out, and I painted the 18 by 24 sketch, and then I just really liked the color of the lights and everything, and then got a bigger canvas out. And this, is this in your house, Heather? No, this is in my house.
Do you take photographs
Well, here's how I do it. Hold it there, Todd. Like when I painted this, I took the canvas with me, and before I started, I took a photograph, and I started painting, and then when the light was just right, I pulled the camera up and took another and finished the paint, finished this point to where I wanted it, and then it can be helpful, maybe, you know, but you don't want. I don't want to rely on the photographic image to help me do this. These colors kind of come out a little bit different in the camera. And now this is on our route that we go back and forth. And in Beaver, Utah, once upon a time, this old barn was there, and so I stopped and made some impressions of this and then painted it. And it's gone now. Yeah, I was sad to see it go. Now this is Sidon Canal, and this is the canal that her grandpa and great-grandpa helped build. And that canal is about 38 miles long up in northern Wyoming. And when they went up there, it was just sagebrush and rocks. And they built that canal, and that canal now, from the Shoshone River that runs at the bottom of the, well, it runs down, and that canal comes out of that, and it has watered a lot of farmland, and so there's a lot of sugar beets and a lot of cattle that are raised with that canal. Another crossing. This is that painting over there. Best Test and the Hay Team, and I thought, oh, the Hay Team, that's clever. It's kind of like the A Team, you know, that old television show. And then I realized nobody remembers the A Team television show, so there's no connection anyway. But it still works as a Hay Team because it is a Hay Team anyway. It was fun to do those two characters. Plein air painting. We used to call it painting on location. I had to learn French so that I could keep painting on location. I had plein air painting, paint outdoors. And this is, of course, Superstition Mountain. And that's a picture of the painting. After I had spent probably, I don't like to spend much more than an hour on a painting like this because the light changes too much. And so then I'll take that home. Now the next one is Sycamore Creek. When Todd was a teenager, we took some Explorer Scout boys up to Sycamore Creek, which is northeast of Mesa, and camped out, and that was a scene that I painted from that. I painted the sketch, and then later on, and this is Cottonwood Creek up by Sedona. Okay, this is another interesting story. I painted this great painting, the top one, and this is my wife, this is Heather, this is Todd, and this is Summer, who's not here. No, this is Summer, who's not here, and this is Holly, who's up in Wyoming. And anyway, nice scene, nice morning scene, like they're getting ready to leave camp and everything. And it hung around my studio for a while, and I even showed it once, but I started looking at it too much. Now, years before, my father had said, when we would get together and talk about our paintings, I say, you know, I'm going to take this certain painting, and I'm going to do this and that to it. He said, don't do anything to it. Go paint a new painting. I didn't listen, or I didn't remember that. And so I was looking at that painting, I thought, I think I'll turn it into a night scene. So I did. I turned it into a night scene. Now here's the problem. I've got two paintings on one canvas. The top painting is gone forever underneath the bottom, the one on the bottom. Ah! What a mistake. Anyway, I know. But here's the funny thing. As I was doing this final one, I got to painting these different people, you know, and I was working on their faces a little bit, and I was painting on this person. Pam said, "You need to paint this person a little better," because she didn't like the way it was. And so I painted and painted, and I said, "Pam, come out and look." She started laughing. She said, you painted your own face on there. I looked and I thought, no. Well, then I said, okay, I just painted the prettiest person I knew. But I changed it, and I tried to put her back into it. At least I got me out of it. So so we have that in our own collection, and you know, something to remind me what not to do. A friend of mine, Craig Ray, that lives over there in eastern Tucson off Speedway, posed for me. Came to my studio there that I had in Tucson, up on Lone Dove Trail, and posed for me while I painted that. And this is Tank Verde wash. This one I took a 24 by 48 inch canvas out and stood there in the water, painted that picture. I just like that painting. I like those crossing scenes. Now this one again is a plein air painting. Castle Rock is a pioneer stopping place up outside of Evanston, just on the Utah border. As you're going almost to go down Echo Canyon, if you've been up in that area and you know anything about that area, but that's quite an interesting rock. So I painted that, and then I took it to my studio and added the Indian characters, which I do sometimes. In Park City, Utah, I was wandering around and I saw that and wanted to paint it. One morning I got up before the sun came up. There in Tucson and here in Tucson, and went out and painted that fairly quickly, because when the sunlight starts hitting, it starts changing pretty fast.
Where is that?
It's I think I was standing on Speedway, you know, just off of Speedway, not very far from Houghton, looking north to the mountain. And this next one is up Bear Canyon. And I'm not sure what they call that rock. I thought it was Needle Rock, but Thimble Rock. Okay. Thimble, needle, you know. Anyway, so Thimble Rock. And I've done a number of 2 or 3 paintings of that. I think it's an interesting one. Again, I stood on the side of the road. They don't give you very much room to paint, so I'm hoping I wouldn't die. Love painting rocks and the lights and shadows. Now Coon Creek is right below our house. It goes into Shoshone River. They're in Byron, Wyoming, and we go back, Todd. There we go. And one Christmas morning, while Pam and some people were fixing, they wanted me to quit putting my hands in the food and eating it. They said, go do something else. And so I went down on the river, got my snow boots on, and stood there and painted that picture.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. And now, you know where the Gila River is?
Yeah.
Okay. About a dozen miles south of Phoenix, there's a big bridge called the Gila River Bridge, and you go over it. I've been over it hundreds of times, and every time I go over it, it's dry as a bone. One time I went over it and there was some water in it. So the very next day, I got my pickup and I went and drove down under the bridge, and felt like I was in pretty good. And I went and made that sketch, and then I went to get in the pickup, and you know that sand crust is pretty thin. I was stuck. And I had to call my son-in-law to come and help me get out. And I noticed that while we were trying to get out, there was a couple of pickups up on a ridge, and they were watching. And so as we're driving out, me and my pickup, and he and the vehicle he had, we're driving out, and there's a reservation cop on the road in front. It's a one-way road, and he stopped there. He says, you know, you're not supposed to be here. I said, I didn't know that. He said, you know, I can confiscate your car and I said, I just painted a picture. I can confiscate that too. I said, well, I hope you don't. He said, well, just next time if you want to come, you're not supposed to be here, but if you want to come, you got to go get permission from the reservation office. And so I don't go there anymore, but that was our story about it. But it was a neat little painting. I was given a commission from Marathon Oil Company to do this this mural of the 100-year, the Wyoming Centennial Mural Commission. And this hung in the Whitney Museum up in Cody for quite a number of months. And so I think we're about, is that about it, Todd? You can let it run now, and I'll take questions if anybody has any questions.
I'll start.
Yeah.
Besides your dad,
Yeah.
are there any other artists who inspire you or who you really admire?
Yeah. When we were first married, Dad gave us a couple $100 to go down to live in Redondo Beach, California, and I studied with a guy named Putnam, and he was a great painter. And I learned a lot from him. Studied with him a couple of summers. Another guy was Bob Myers, who was an illustrator for Saturday Evening Post. He had moved out to Cody, Wyoming, and we would go up every other week and take up the work we'd done, and he'd critique, and we'd have some lessons from Bob Myers, and then of course, you know, I just collect. Since we lived in Wyoming, well, my dad traveled quite a bit because he hired teachers. So we'd travel, and wherever we went, we'd hit museums and stuff. And so I had a lot of museum experiences as a kid, as a child, and then a teenager. And when we began our family, these kids got drugged through plenty of museums as well. And so, you know, there's just so many artists that I admire and I like. And when I collect reproductions of their work, and you know, I can't say that a lot of them have inspired me.
So, Glenn, what are you painting today?
Okay, this is interesting. I wish I had put a picture of it, but I got a commission from a man whose grandfather was a soldier in World War II in Germany. He was an American soldier, and he was a messenger on a motorcycle, and he was driving along, and he stopped to have a break and have a cigarette. So he's kind of leaning on his motorcycle, and he's having a cigarette, and of course, there's noise going on, and he hears a voice, "Soldier!" And he turns around to tell him, you know, stick it somewhere, you know, and it's General Patton. So that's the picture I'm finishing right now, General Patton, and Corporal Dawson is his name. Yeah. And it's a lot of fun.
So you're still doing plein air mostly, or
Huh?
you're still doing mostly plein air?
I do a lot of plein air, yeah. And the workshop we're having is going to be concentrating on that kind of thing. I think it's really important for an artist starting out to paint on location, paint from models, learn how to draw, you know, to do all of that stuff, and paint because you love it, you know, and if a career develops from it, great. If not, just paint anyway.
Were any of your crossings from Lee's Ferry?
Yeah, there's a Lee's Ferry down in that room down there.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, and it shows. And it was an interesting project. I was commissioned to do a large painting for Dennis Barney in Mesa, and his great grandfather was a pioneer. Came down from Utah to come to Mesa, and he had about 200 or 300 head of cows, and they got to Lee's Ferry, and the cows didn't want to go in. So this is about 1881. So he gets in a rowboat, puts a lariat around his horse Charlie, and he starts rowing out, and of course Charlie follows him, and then the guys can push the cows in because they'll follow Charlie, and that's how he gets them across the river. So that's the painting I did for Dennis Barney. Huh?
Which room?
It's in
The slate room.
You turn left and go down the stairs and stand there. And then the picture I have though is the cows are there's cows, but they're not in, and what there is a wagon crossing on a barge. And I spent 2 or 3 days at the Lee's Ferry researching that, and did a lot of sketching. Went on a boat out in the river, sketched back, and I thought I had everything taken care of for the painting I was going to do. And the next morning, as I was ready to leave home, I better go out. It was early in the morning, and check one more time, just make sure. And the light, that was the light. And so I took my paints, set them up on the dock, and got those colors. And it was a lot of fun.
In 1883, they said the most terrifying word this river.
I bet. I bet.
Go ahead.
The ability to do both landscapes and character, there's not a lot of artists, there are a lot of artists that will combine them, but not do them separately, like you've done. Can you talk about that as well as the historical accuracy?
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important to be historically accurate. And so when I was doing my Indian things, I did a lot of research. I became sort of a mini expert on that, on the Plains Indian lifestyle. But in my training, I found it in my high school art class I was pretty good at doing portraits. I got a pretty good likeness. So around 18 and 19, I spent a couple of summers in Cody painting portraits of tourists for $5 a head. It would take about 20 minutes, and so I painted hundreds and hundreds of those. And in studying with my dad, I remember while we were doing, because Pam was in classes too sometimes, and other kids, and while we were doing our projects, he would sometimes read things to us. One of the things he told us was that, the hardest thing to paint is the human figure. And the hardest thing of the human figure to paint is the face. A light bulb came up in my head, and I thought, well, if I learn how to paint the face, then there's nothing I can't paint. And painting landscapes on location, and I'll tell this to the group when we have them. One of the early ones that I did, I went with my dad and another guy. I was a teenager, and we went up in the Beartooth Mountains above Cody. Beautiful country, and there was this panoramic scene. It was morning, and so I started this canvas painting that panoramic scene, and after about 2 hours, I gave up. It was just too vast. Anyway, so you can bite off way more than you can chew if you're not careful.
Yeah.
You referred to the painting in the next room.
Yeah.
Are you an MO artist member?
Yeah, I am. In fact, this club has been very generous, very good to me. John Goodman was, he was very good to the artists as they came along. I think I was a guest member for a few years, but who's our guy that sponsored this? Art Gould was a good friend and a collector of my work and sponsored us. Art and his wife were very good to us, and in fact visited us up at one time at our home. But he had a number of paintings in his collection, and John Davis is another fellow that has been good. Just everybody was just all very. In fact, this book here I did back in 2002. I painted it and wrote it, and John Davis printed it for me. So, a beautiful book, Old Nauvoo Through the Eyes of Artist Glen Hopkinson, talks about some of our ancestors and who went through that period of time.
Glenn, you might just mention, I don't remember the year actually, but when we started and we were invited to come and show, when I say we, when he was invited to come and show.
It's a we program.
It was down in the little building downtown
Oh,
the old building. Yes.
Yeah.
And there was a fairly small group of artists at that time.
Yeah.
We were invited, we'd go out on the patio. Yeah. And so it's been a lot of years.
A lot of years, yeah.
That's a long time. Yeah.
And it's a joy to come every year, and it's great when you come and somebody likes your paintings and signs up for it, and it's sort of disappointing when you have a painting and nobody signed up for it. But I told somebody tonight, I said, well, it's a crapshoot. It really is. You think, what will I paint that will, just really kind of hit somebody in the right spot. But again, you just don't know what it'll be. Yeah.
If you were to look at one of your paintings from 25 years ago, what would your person today say to the person who's back around?
Well, it's like seeing an old friend, and some of them are astoundingly good. and so I'll look at something that I did 30 years ago, and I say, well, that's pretty good. Why aren't they any better now than I was then? I should be really a lot better. But I've also told people, they say, well, how can you stand to sell your paintings? I said, well, it's like raising a child in your home, you know? You love them and you have them around, and when they're 18, it's time to let them go. And so that's what my paintings are. When they're that age, you know, they can go.
Do you ever have trouble deciding when you're finished with a painting?
Oh yeah, yeah. And that one is an example. I should have known. But the trick is to quit before you ruin it. And you can really ruin a painting by just one portrait I did, well in fact that Daisy Bell, did I tell anybody about the Daisy Bell? Anyway, I did a portrait that took us up to Cody of Daisy Bell. It was a really nice portrait, big thing. It was going to be in a saloon. And some guy had a big motel and a saloon, and so he wanted his mother portrayed in that saloon, the Daisy Bell saloon. Anyway, so I painted Daisy Bell, and she's in the outfit that she was wearing in 1880 when she was photographed, and a good face and everything. I thought, you know, I like the way the paint went on, but I need to do this, and I did this. No, that didn't quite work, and I did this. That didn't work either. Anyway. It didn't work so bad that I had to get another canvas and do another painting. So, you know, you can kill a painting easy. But it's a fun job, and somebody's got to do it, and I'm glad that, I'm glad it's worked out for us.
How about nice friends in Western Art?
Thank you.